Good evening. Welcome to the 26th episode of Add Water and Stir. I am Adoptive Black Mom from the blog of the same name, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host Mimi from ComplicatedMelodi. Say hi, Mimi.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast.
Mimi's got a new mic, so she's sounding fabulous tonight.
Ooh, and I feel fabulous, too. I feel professional.
Meanwhile, ABM is still bootleg with the cheap headphones and mic. Anyway, the Add Water and Stir podcast focuses on promoting foster care and adoption within communities of color, especially within the African American community. We want to give voice and visibility to families like ours who often seem left out of mainstream adoption conversations. We hope to educate others as we talk about our struggles and our triumphs in parenting our children who happen to be adopted. So if you are watching us live, certainly drop a question in the Q&A or comment box on the Hangout, or tweet us at AWAS Pod. That's AWAS, Add Water and Stir, Pod, P-O-D. So now is our portion. We'll actually talk about two topics tonight. We're talking about transitioning your child, whether it's foster or adoptive placement, to their hopefully forever family. And in the second segment, we will talk about college prep and preparing financially for college for our kids. And of course, we will never end a podcast without talking about pop culture in our segment, The Wind Down. But first, we will start tonight's show by catching up on both myself and Mimi. So Mimi, what's going on in your world?
Ooh, I've been sick. I've been sick for the last week. I went to work on Monday, wasn't feeling well, and they sent me home because I was coughing. My job is very safety sensitive. So if you start coughing, they're like, goodbye, you cannot be here. What? Yeah, seriously. So I stopped at the little Walgreens clinic. I never stopped at one of those before. But anyway, they diagnosed me there with walking pneumonia. And I started freaking out because I never heard of walking pneumonia. And all I hear about is people going to the hospital with pneumonia and not getting well. So but basically did the walking pneumonia, stayed at home for a couple of days, and I've been resting. So that's what I've been up to. As far as the kid goes, the Nana, she's been chilling, just doing her 3-year-old thing. We're working on her letters. I would like her to get to write her name at 3. That would be amazing. I know. So that's what we're doing. What about you? What's going on?
Overachieving with mommy over there.
But don't be jealous if your child can't write her name at 3. So neither can mine. Neither can mine. So don't.
Has Nana been convalescing with you, or have you been dropping her
no,
off?
ma'am. There's no rest with Nana. She actually stayed at home with me today, and I was like, "This is not rest at all." So no, she had to go to preschool. She goes to school, so you have to go to school. You can't just miss school randomly. So
right.
So what about you? I've been hearing about this band camp situation. What's going on?
Camp is killing me. So, there was not that many years ago, I used to get up at 4:30 in the morning, hitting the gym. I mean, just boss in the morning. I am a hardcore morning person until I have to be for a sustained period of time. And the morning wake up is 5 a.m. wake up call to get Hope to school at 7. And it is killing me. It's killing me in terms of lack of sleep, because that hour lost in the morning, more 30 minutes lost in the morning, is catching up with the not going to bed any earlier in the evening. And I've got deadlines at work. It's just been a little bit crazy. And every day there is hey, Mom, you didn't get me the right kind of notebook for marching band. Hey, Mom, I need $35 for the band shoes. Or this band parent culture. These jokers, I don't know who has time for this, but they send so many emails on the listserv that I just set it up so that I just get one digest email a day. And it's
You get
like,
that many emails that you need a digest, a daily digest.
I need a daily digest because they are forever begging for something, selling something, asking me to sign up for something. Why can't you bring oranges for 60 kids because they need a snack? And how about I just need y'all to pack your own kids' snacks? How about that?
That's
That's
because
what
you go to your kid must go to one of those good schools with the PTAs and the involved parents. I don't remember any of that when I was in school.
the band boosters are so serious that I will not have time for PTA again this year because the single parent life, I can't do it all. And yeah, they're all that genius sign up thing. I don't know. I've never used it before except for a band for last year. And they're I mean, there must be 5 signups for something. And I'm just like, can I just send y'all some, like, PayPal y'all some money and leave me alone. Anyway, it's great. Hope is doing wonderful. We're getting ready for the big transition to high school, and I will talk a little bit about kind of some of the things that we're doing when we get to the second segment of the show. So let's chat about making the big move. So it's the day you've finally been prepping for ever since you started the adoption or the foster care process. It's soon to be move-in day, or you've actually done the meet and greets and you're starting to think about when is the date for your child to move in and kind of get settled in his or her forever home. This can be a really exciting day for you, filled with lots of emotions, but it's also really an emotional day for your child as well. It can feel a lot like just another move on their journey, particularly if they've been to several foster homes on that journey. And while for you it may be a day that represents kind of when your family becomes complete, it's often yet another day of loss for your child as they leave their current placement to join you. And so it can be really tough for our kids. So tonight we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the transition of moving in and sharing a little bit about our transition stories and what can be done to help support your child during what can be a really big, tough transition for them. So Mimi, tell us a little bit about Nana's transition. We heard last time on the show your fantastic meet and greet at Chick-fil-A. So what happened after that?
Okay, so our caseworker had a very strict plan that we were supposed to follow. So it's supposed to go like this. First, we're going to have the meeting. It's going to be like an hour or so just to, meet Nana. Then we're going to have a day visit sometime like the next weekend. Then we do an overnight visit and then she'd come to stay. So she was very strict about it. And it just seemed like it was going to take a long time. So I've mentioned before, I had a lady that was I consider her my foster care mentor. And I had told her this plan and she was like, look, your baby is 2 years old, going for a week between visits. She probably won't really remember you. So maybe you should try to push for something different. Again, this goes back to you can ask for different things if you know that you can ask for those. So I did go back to my caseworker to ask about that. Additionally, the foster mom wasn't really down for that long transition either. And I don't even know why, but she was like, you can take her overnight on the next visit. I do it all the time. She goes to respite all the time. So that was a little disconcerting, but everybody agreed to it. So our next visit was an overnight visit. And then when she came, we were supposed to then take her back. And then the next weekend, she was going to stay with us. But after the overnight visit, I asked her, she stayed till Monday, that I was allowed to do that. And then I was like, I just don't want her to go back. So we called the caseworker. They got the foster mother's agency involved and we made an agreement and she just stayed with us from that day. So that was our transition. So it did not go as originally scheduled. So that's one thing I would say, you have to be a little bit flexible with that, but also you can ask for what's in the best interest. What do you think is in the best interest of the child? Like, I didn't think it would be great for Nana to go back for another week and then just to come back again. Just didn't make sense. Especially with the foster mom just kind of pushing her off. Like, she can go. So what about you?
Well, we had our meet and greet when I went out to visit her on the West Coast. And after I got back, then we started planning for a lengthy visit for her to come to the East Coast. And because we were kind of a bi-coastal adoption placement situation, we really needed to have longer periods of time where we spent together. So I guess that was, 2013, no, 12, no, 13. So we planned a visit over Thanksgiving, and it was about 2 weeks long. I blogged about it, so you can go back and I'll probably tweet out some of those links. But she was with me for a period of 2 weeks, and it was one of the few times that she'd flown cross country. And, we had a long visit where the honeymoon lasted probably about the night that she slept.
That was it.
And that was it. And we were off to the races. And then the plan after that was that we would just set a move-in date as soon as our ICPC went through. But doing the ICPC over the holidays made for a pretty lengthy process. So I ended up flying out to see her. I flew out. I spent Christmas with my immediate family in my hometown, and then I took a red eye to the West Coast so that we could spend the day after Christmas together, so that we would have another kind of period of time where we could spend time together. It wasn't as lengthy as either of our previous visits, but I really just wanted her to see my commitment to us working out. So I flew out, and then she moved in less than a month later.
Wow. So what that just tells me is that, everyone's transition plan is going to be incredibly different, and it's going to be so unique to each family depending on the situation, because Nana was 2 and your child at the time, Hope, was 11.
12.
She was 12 at the time. So so that's completely different ages. So the need of the child, you might need a longer transition. With Hope being 11 years old, she already had established friends and people there, that she was dealing with. So she needs to have some time to say goodbye. Where Nana was 2, she kind of just went to the next person. She was used to respite, so she just moved on to the next person. So
yeah. I will say that go ahead. Well, I was going to say we did phone calls, and I tried to call her probably every other day until she finally said, "Why are you calling me so often?" And I was like, "Well, I want to I want to talk to you. I want to get to know you better. Like, I'm going to be your mom, and hey." And she was like, "Well, I mean, I'm going to be living with you for a really long." Yeah. Well, what she told me, she kind of just broke it down to me, and really kind of, it was just weird. But she said, "Well, I mean, I'm going to be living with you, so we can talk when I get there. Like, so I don't need to talk to you now."
So that's the mind of a teenager. That was logical.
Yeah. So that was her rationale. And I said, "Oh, okay." And just said, "Well, then you call me." And so we ended up talking maybe twice a week. And there was a period of time where, in getting to the opening for this segment, that she really struggled, and she you could almost tell that she was going through the stages of grief and thinking about moving, especially since it was such a long move away from pretty much everything she'd ever known. And she kept trying to negotiate staying through the rest of the school year, when we had rationalized, the adults in the situation had rationalized, that moving her at the midterm, the semester break, which falls typically in mid-January, was going to be a better time. That way she could start the next quarter here in Virginia. And she just really rebelled against that a lot. And so it made things really difficult. It was really upsetting for her. She wanted to move, but it was just really like, I have to give up so much to get one of the one things that I really want. So it was a lot of grief.
So I was going to ask you, what type of things did you do to prepare for her transition there? So I'll just kind of run down a couple of the things that we did. So one of the first things that we did is talk to her foster mom to try to get an understanding of who she was. You know, it's still hard. She was 2, but who she was as a little person. What's her favorite things, what she liked and disliked, just so we could have some of those things in place. And honestly, her foster mom just wasn't really helpful with trying to ensure that she had the same comforts here that she had there. She just I tried to take that a little bit into context because it's a 2-year-old, so she didn't have any strong feelings. And then once Nana got here, we understood she really doesn't have a lot of strong preferences for things. But we also went through this whole nesting process. So I was sitting in her room. I bought a teddy bear because I think I had read in some, you read a lot of stuff. You're on the forums all the time, trying to figure out, how to get ready. And so we bought this teddy bear so we can be like, this is your teddy bear. This is the one thing that, you can just gravitate to. She didn't care about that teddy bear. That teddy bear is in the corner somewhere. But, and then when she got here, we hunkered down. Basically, during her overnight visit, we went to this program put on by the our adoption agency. And when we got there, she just went to anybody that walked up to us. She would just automatically open her arms and go to them. And that just really made me nervous. Like, she just didn't have any discretion to know that, okay, the people that I came with are the people that I'm going to stay with, because she had just moved around so much and she had been to respite so much. So I knew it was going to take some work to work on attachment. So what I did during that transition, I took off of work for 3 weeks. And then it was just all day, Nana and I, we just hung out all day. There was a lot of cuddling and kissing, a lot of playing. We went to daycare centers to check out where she would go to school. And we just hung out. And I think that helped a lot to kind of structure our relationship at the beginning. So those are some of the things we did to kind of help ease that transition. What about you? You guys had a very long transition.
We had a pretty long transition. It went on for several months before she actually moved. But once she was here with much older kids, if you're if school is in, the goal is to try to get them enrolled in school and attending as quickly as possible, because it helps to set up a routine, and routines are really good for kids. So that was our goal. However, in 2014, last year, we had an enormous amount of snow here in the Mid-Atlantic region. And so we would set up an appointment. She actually was delayed one day arriving because we had so much snow that her flight was canceled. So, which was really hard for her because she had finally kind of geared all up to come, and then the flight was canceled. And so it was it was a bit traumatic for her. So once she got here, we did a bit of nesting, and I figured she was getting here, I think maybe on a Tuesday. Originally, she got here on Wednesday. We would kind of nest the rest of the week, and I would try to get her in school the following week. Well, what actually happened was we had mountains of snow, and every time we had an appointment to get to enroll in school after we got vaccines and all those kinds of things, it would snow again and school would be closed. And the central administration office would be closed. So we were delayed getting her into school by about 2.5 weeks. So we actually had a lot of time nesting, and it wasn't even like we could kind of go out into the area and do sightseeing and things. We were homebound.
So y'all were closer than close.
Yeah. So it was, there were some really great things about that. We watched a lot of movies. We did a lot of talking. We played a lot of games. But after a while, with a, preteen, we were a little sick of each other. It finally got to the point where I just ordered some snow pants and stuff, and we finally went outside to go burn off some energy. And so we had a good time. But before that, much like you, I did a lot of nesting. I had her room painted. I talked about on the last podcast how I'd taken a book of different kinds of swatches and lighting and all kinds of things for her to pick out. And so I spent the time while we were kind of visiting and talking on the phone, making sure that the room was prepared for her. Furniture was ordered, all of those kinds of things, so that she was really excited to see her room once she did arrive. So yeah, that's how we rolled.
Okay. Well, we have a couple of articles that we'll post in the show notes that talk about how to help you have a smooth transition. If you have questions about what we did or some other things that we didn't talk about in the podcast, feel free to give us a tweet or an email, and we will answer those questions.
Yeah. In those show notes, we'll have a lot of things. There's some really great resources, even things like what kinds of checklists there are for your social workers or the adoption team that is designed to kind of support certainly the child and what's in the best interest of the child and some of those things. But definitely, if possible, make that connection with the foster family. Unfortunately for Mimi, it doesn't sound like that really happened, but certainly Hope's former foster family, her last foster family, we still keep in touch with. I still send pictures. We call every now and again. They do get a school picture just like everybody else. But some of the other things that some of the articles mention are educating your family about kind of what their expectations should be. And that maybe you do need some time to nest, depending on the age of the child and kind of what emotions the child are going through, but also kind of family language for your new addition, so that it's not like, this is my adopted granddaughter or my adopted niece, but this is my granddaughter, this is my niece, this is my sister. Those kinds of things really kind of help to create a sense of family for the child as well as for the larger community. So we'll post some of that stuff there.
Yeah, and I'd actually love to hear if any of our listeners actually did the transition. They already had children in the home. That's one thing that we really don't have an experience in, because our children are our first children, and maybe the last children, we're not sure. But if you did have that, and you have some tips for people who already have children in the home and how you prepare them and your new child for their transition and how that was like, we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to give us a tweet at AWAS pod, or send us an email to addwaterandstirpodcast@gmail.com.
Sure. And some of these things are also certainly really relevant as well for those folks who are not adopting from foster care specifically, but really kind of looking at infant adoption. There's still kind of some things that you need to be mindful of in that transition, particularly if you will have an open adoption, and kind of what will that transition look like while you're waiting for an ICPC, or the waiting period for when the birth mother or the birth parents sign their TPRs, and all of those kinds of things. And so definitely some of the resources that we'll have in the show notes will include some things for adoptive parents of newborns as well. All righty. So moving on, our second segment tonight talks about saving for college. So foster kids are unfortunately less likely, kids who have been in the system, less likely to attend college immediately after high school. And this can be attributed to numerous factors, not the least of which are that in moving around, kids tend to miss school. And so they miss different kinds of lessons that may really be core and foundational for them progressing academically. As college costs escalate, foster and older adoptees and their families really find that they may be less prepared than biological families to afford college because of less time to save. Additionally, because foster kids are less likely to, and older adoptees who even successfully kind of complete high school, whether on time or not, and persist to college, even if they just attend a few college courses and don't complete, they stand to earn $129,000 more than if they had not attended any college courses at all. And if they complete college, they're likely to make more than $500,000 over the course of their lifetime, that they will actually earn that much more than what they would have earned if they had not persisted to college. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what kinds of expectations we have for our kids in terms of preparing them for college, but also in terms of kind of what we're doing to financially prepare. And this is something that is really, I will say, in the interest of full disclosure, scares me to death because I only have a couple of years to get ready. But there are some great resources out there. So we have some really great and kind of sad information, though, about foster kids who age out of the system. Their foster families do tend to help support them. If they remain in care until the age of 21, they have a much greater likelihood of actually going to college and having that family help them. So, Mimi, what are you guys doing and Wood doing? You got that 529 account ready?
Well, we're not quite there yet. So luckily we have a time on our side. But we do need to get it together already. So one of the things that I think people may or may not know is that depending on your state and depending on the situation of your child, you may qualify for tuition for your child. So there's a couple of federal programs, and we'll put these out on the show notes. But if you have a child that was adopted from foster care at age 13 or older, on the FAFSA student aid, then they'll consider an independent student, which means they don't have to take family income. So they're more likely to qualify for financial aid. So that's a good thing. And if they're adopted from the foster care system at age 16 or older, then there's also some other kind of education and training voucher assistance that provides up to $5,000 a year for like vocational or technical training program. So there are some things in place. And then for specifically in our situation, because we adopted from Texas and we happen to adopt what's considered a special needs child. So she gets adoption assistance, and she's special needs because of the age and the fact that she's a minority. So that's why she's called a special needs child in Texas, not because she has anything particularly wrong with her or any challenges that she has. But anyway, because of that, she is eligible for state tuition, college or university. So she qualifies for the tuition and the fee waiver. And so we're banking on that. No, I'm just kidding. You're going to school in Texas. No matter where we are, you're going back to school in Texas.
Yeah. Well,
so we're not banking on it. But we probably will strongly influence her to look at this school, look at A&T. Don't you like it? But yeah, we'll be probably influencing her to go to Texas. But our expectation is this right now. I went to college. My husband went to college. My mom went to college. My sister went to college. We are, that generation of people who went to college. But I don't want to force that on her. But I do just have it as a general expectation. But if you don't go to college, then you got to go somewhere. You got to do something. So whether it's a technical training, some kind of vocational training, my sister is big on vocational training right now. So I just think our expectation is that you have to do more. You have to do your best to continue to improve yourself. So that's our expectation. But since we have alternatives available for you, I think we'll encourage her to take advantage of those. What about you? Sure. What you doing over there? You got your 529 set up?
I do have my 529 set up.
So you are ahead of the game, so go ahead.
I do have the 529 set up. And, it's funny because a year ago, Hope said, why would I go to college? Like, why would I go to college? Nobody in my family has gone to college, so why would I go to college? And I was like, well, in our family, everybody in this generation goes to college. Although, in my immediate family, I was the first. Both my parents had some college, but I was the first to complete in my most immediate family. And and certainly my sisters finished up as well. And so, you know, my expectation
And you
was,
do have a doctorate degree too, so you know.
well, there's that. So, which comes in handy every now and again, like when I'm fighting for her. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. But I will say that you know, I try to be mindful of things, but many, not only of those federal programs, but as Mimi mentioned, a lot of states have specific programs for foster kids, as well as kids who were adopted from foster care. And so some of them have age limits, some of them don't. Certainly will. I did find a list of a number of that included a number of states. Maybe it probably is not all exhaustive, but certainly will give you some place to start looking. But a lot of states do have some provisions for financial support for those students. I have not yet found tuition remission for the
See, you should have
Commonwealth
moved to
that I live
Texas.
in.
You should have moved to Texas.
I might have to rethink that. But I also, because we were an interstate adoption, I do need to also look at those resources that are available in her home state as well, and kind of figure out what might be best for her, because now she is thinking about college. And I have to tell you, so she said the most amazing thing 2 weeks ago to me, and it was really the nicest thing I think that she'd ever said to me. I mean, aside from the first time she called me mom, or the first time she said she loved me. So we've gone to the dentist for a braces consult, and you know, the dentist that she goes to is a DMD instead of just a DDS. So he does everything. He does orthodontia, he does surgery, he does it all. Young guy, charismatic, really fun. And, you know, she's a very inquisitive kid. She asks a lot of questions, and he was so patient with her and asked her all her questions. And I was thinking to myself, great, I will be emailing him to see if maybe she can come shadow for a day and kind of learn a little bit more about dentistry and those kinds of things. And, you know, a couple of days later, we were on the way to camp that morning, and she said, you know, maybe I'll become a surgeon or a dentist, or, you know, a surgeon thing, maybe an oral surgeon sounds like really cool. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is so amazing, because a year ago she was like, why would I go to college? And now she's thinking about graduate school. How awesome is that, right? And so then
that is awesome. That's a win.
That is totally a win. But here's the super win. This is like the Super Bowl of wins. She goes, so, you know, and I'll make a lot of money. I'll make a really good living, and I'll buy a really big house. And when you get old, you can have your own room. And at first, of course, I was like, you just gonna put me in a room? And she was like, well, you know, like like it won't just be a room, mom. It'll be like, you know, a little area of the house. And I'm thinking to myself, like a wing or a suite. Awesome. Right? So, and then it dawned on me that she's not going to put me in a home.
Hallelujah. Did you save that? Did you record that? So you can play that back when you get to 65 and all that mess she starts talking.
Right. And like, she's trying to put me in shady vibes. Right. And so but she was like, no, like, and I was like, you wouldn't put me in a home? She was like, no, you can come and live with me. And I'm like, oh my God,
that is
total parenting win. This is the nicest thing she's ever said to me.
That she won't put you in a home. That's the nicest thing you ever. I think my mom would agree. We had this conversation actually when we were in DC, so about what was going to happen with her as she got older. So I think she, you know, the fact that we wouldn't put her in a home, I think, you know, that just warmed the cockles of her heart.
Hey, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm still going to buy long-term care insurance just in case we fall out or something. I need a backup plan, but it was really the nicest thing. But anyway, my point was that now she's thinking really long-term, and the cost of college is going up and escalating quickly. And, you know, when I went to college, and maybe when you went to college, I don't know, my parents said, well, one, the world ends at the Virginia State border. We've got great colleges here. So let's be about that, you know, in-state resident tuition life, number one. And number two, kind of, you know, there was always an expectation that we would go and that somehow it would be taken care of. But, you know, my parents really didn't foot the bill for, my education. They certainly helped along the way, but they did not foot the bill. And there seems to be this interesting expectation that parents not only help, but really kind of shoulder a lot more of the financial burden. Seems to be the going expectation. So
that is really interesting, because I do feel like that's something that is completely, maybe not completely new, but becoming way more mainstream. And I understand it, right? Because now, as a person who has school debt, that is no joke. I do not appreciate it at all. Sally Mae is so disrespectful. But besides that, I guess over time you're expected that you're going to be in a better position. And since we already have gone through it, we'll be able to be in a better position to help our kids then. But wow, that is a high expectation, though, to pay entirely for your child's college. And if you have multiple kids, it's interesting. I'm still sitting with that weight. I mean, we're saving, but it's still something I'm like,
yeah,
I'm not quite comfortable with that.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, just philosophically, I'm like, I certainly don't expect her to do it on her own, totally. But shouldering that burden in a season of my life that, I need to be pinching my pennies seems, I don't know. But
so what Mimi is not going to do is not going to be over here eating cat food while you out pledging a sorority. No, ma'am. So, all these things are going to be coming with limits. So we'll have to figure out where we are when we get there. This might be a shared expectation.
So no cat food for Mimi and Wood. I do want to shout out future adopter who has dropped a comment. Where she is very excited because she has a placement from who goes by the name of A. Definitely check out her blog, Sister's Guide to Adoption. But she says that A recently told her that one day when he grows up, he is going to move into the house next door, which that's right. You are doing big things over there, future. You are doing big things.
So does that mean he's going to buy you a house next door? And then, or is this, he's going to get the property next door? I'm interested in the details of this situation. So,
well, seeing as he's 4, I'm thinking he's got to work some stuff.
Yeah, he has a little time.
He's got a little bit of time. But I will say that in thinking about just preparing for college and being mindful of kind of some of the struggles of our kids, one of the things that I discovered during this last school year was how much foundational knowledge that Hope missed because she was being moved around. And even with the transition here, things that maybe her school planned on covering in the spring semester, the schools here covered in the fall semester. So she just missed it. So this summer, much to her chagrin, I've been hanging out on Pinterest. Pinterest can be your friend, and downloading all kinds of things like worksheets. And so we're doing algebra and pre-algebra worksheets. 1, so she doesn't forget the things that she's learned, and 2, so that I can push her a little bit so that some things aren't completely new when she starts school in a few weeks. But one of the things I've noticed for her that she struggles with, and some of the academic struggles then turn into behavioral frustration struggles. And if you have a child, particularly, this has been my recent experience, and I'd heard about this, I'd read about it, I read the research that kids of color are disproportionately kind of maligned in education, and they're kind of labeled, and if they get frustrated, there's a likelihood that they kind of act out and all those kinds of things. And it's typically because they're not having some basic needs met, rather than the fact that they're just trying to be disruptive, right? And so I've seen teachers and guidance counselors try to track Hope into courses that she shouldn't be in, courses that are not college prep, courses that are just not going to get her and position her to have different kinds of choices at graduation. And I just want her to have choices. I think that she may or may not need a gap year I don't know. We'll see what the world looks like in 4 years. But I know that there are definitely some academic gaps that we've been really kind of experiencing some challenges with. And so, as Mimi mentioned earlier, yeah, so last year I became Dr. ABM. And so that's when I have to show up at the school, not just as angry ABM, but Dr. Angry ABM.
You know, I'm sure that doctor
you
adds a little weight to that situation.
Oh, you'd be surprised how like everybody gets brand new. All of a sudden, folks are very kind and considerate, and they talk to you with a very different tone, with a different level of respect, and it saddens me how many kids, whether they have been in the system or not, but how many kids who happen to be kids of color and or from low income communities, because I see this as well, that trend as well, whose parents try to advocate for them but have very little voice. So, there is a whole cottage industry just around educational consultants that can kind of help folks do that. But like if you need a letter, like holla at your girl. So anyway, a doctor has given us a little bit more information about she says he wants his own house where he can play all day because he just wants to live close to me. I assume for cooking his meals and doing his laundry.
I consider that a parenting win, and a loss. Since you have to still cook and do laundry, but he still wants to live close to you. That's the major thing.
That's the upside. So, anything else that we want to talk about in college prep?
No, just a reminder that I need to get a little bit more focused on this activity. She's came at 2, she's 3 now. Next time, she'll be 18. So
yeah. Do we have another message? Maybe we have another message. No. Okay. So it is time for the wind down, appropriately named by our friend, our blogging friend, future adopter, where we talk a bit about pop culture. And tonight we are talking about as Mimi takes a sip from her gigantic glass.
I got my Olivia Pope glass tonight. Yes.
I have my Wendy's, Dave Thomas Foundation cup that has been modified for wind down purposes.
I was wondering what was in that cup. I was like, is that like, how Dr. Heavily on Married to Medicine, she always has that coffee cup with some cognac in there. So I was wondering what was in that Wendy's cup.
So I'm rocking a nice rum and Coke with a squirt of lime. So, you just pop the top and fix it up. So tonight we are going to talk about our thoughts on the hit movie that apparently folks didn't think was going to make any money last weekend, but pulled in 60 million, Straight Outta Compton. So I have not seen the movie. I don't know, Mimi, if you've seen it, but do you plan to see it, and why or why not?
Well, I have not seen the movie. And that's mainly because I have not seen any movie in the last 2 years. No, I'm just kidding. But, kids keep you from doing a lot of things. So it has to be like, oh, I have to see this movie before you can make some preparations to do that. But we have not seen the movie. There hasn't been a lot of talk around my house about seeing the movie. I think I would have been interested in seeing it. It is something that I remember pretty distinctly growing up. As I remember Tipper Gore and throwing out the CDs, and I remember the whole parental advisory lyrics thing where that started being on the CD. So I remember this. This is right in my wheelhouse of time. So I think I would have seen the movie. I think it's interesting, once again, that people underestimate the purchasing power of Black people. I don't get this because we tend to be early adopters of technology. We consume quite a bit, but yet people don't think that our movies will sell. So I'm glad that knocked it out the park with all that. But there's been a lot of controversy about this movie too. Mainly because people feel like there's a couple of things. One, you are getting a biopic by people who are still living, right? So those people are very involved, and I'm talking about Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, very involved in the creation of a movie about them, where they're still there to kind of create the story. And you know that history is written by the victors, right? So the people who are left, those are the people who are writing the story. So you definitely know that the story is going to be skewed. And one of the ways that it's definitely been skewed and been talking about is the fact that it doesn't really focus on the misogyny against women and some of the abuse that happened and just their general feelings against women, and particularly Black women. So Dee Barnes had put an article out in Gawker maybe last week or earlier this week about her fight that she had with Dr. Dre. Well, actually, it wasn't a fight. That Dr. Dre really, beat her down at a club because he felt like she was being disrespectful. And Miss Cholet also did a interview with Vlad TV, and she talks about Dr. Dre's abuse towards her. Of course, all of these incidents apparently were skipped in the movie. And again, if the people who are making the movie are still living and they are very involved in the movie, of course, they're not going to put things in the movie that are going to make them really look bad, especially during this time where we're talking about there's so much focus on women and abuse and, just our general perception around that. So what about you? I talked a lot. Were you planning to go see the movie, or what's your thought on it?
I don't know. I have to say that, this is NWA was also time-wise in my wheelhouse. It was a period of time, when they hit the highs, I was in college, and it was the party music, man. I mean, but I also, even at that time, struggled with the way they talked about women, and struggled with how struggle with the narratives around kind of stories like Dee Barnes. I mean, like, I didn't know so much about Michelle at the time, but certainly, I mean, everybody, well, what happened with Dee Barnes happened in a very public event. And I felt some kind of way about it. So, I certainly was a consumer of the music of that and lots of other kinds of other music that probably was considered controversial at the time. Because, I mean, I am a huge, to this day, Public Enemy fan. And my office knows that, like, when I am not in a good space, they will hear Fight the Power blaring through my doorway. That said,
Really? Okay. Do you guys remember the story from last week about confrontation? How many other Black people are in the office with you, ABM?
3. So that's
okay.
30%. We are office 10.
I wouldn't come by the office either. I'd be like, I am not associated with that.
And just to belabor the point just one more time, like, I recently got rid of all of my white dry erase boards, and I now have black dry erase boards. And my boss was like, "So what's that about?" I don't know. You can come to your own conclusions, dude. I got anyway. So
why the black marker got to be writing on a white board?
Exactly. So, it started out, the first one I got was really because it was cool. Then I made it a political statement by getting another one. I have like this huge wall of black dry erase boards. But anyway, I digress. So, I like the music despite the fact that it has, lyrics and stories behind it that make me uncomfortable as I've gotten older. But I have to say that it's hard to kind of, I mean, if a movie was going to be made about me today and I'm still living, please no, I'm calling Halle Berry. I don't look nothing like her. She don't look nothing like her.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like trying to like book the finest chick ever in movies. Like, oh no, she's playing me. Like, no, I really look like that. Like, I'm gonna tell the story that I want to tell. And I think that to some degree it's a little unfair for us to think back and look at our more mature look through the lens of maturity back at a time when all of us did dumb stuff, you know? And so there's a discomfort that I feel about that and kind of judging something by a standard by which we have evolved to, where, I mean, it doesn't make it right or wrong, but because clearly some of the things that they did, a lot of the things that they did were wrong, but they didn't take away from some of the political messages that were really important and actually are even more resonant now than they were.
I don't know. I might have to pick a little bit with you on that one. Because
the criticism around police brutality, I think, is specifically what I'm talking about. That some, you know, it wasn't packaged in a really neat, clean way, and it wasn't even packaged in a way that Public Enemy did, and so it was a lot more confrontational and it was a lot more angry, and you know, it doesn't excuse it. I'm not sure if I'm going to see it. Is kind of where I am. I don't have Beats by Dre. I don't want to buy Beats by Dre because I just philosophically don't believe that headphones should cost that much. Note that I had the $5 headphones on still, but you know, I mean, I don't know. I feel kind of some kind of way about it. I know that Hope won't be seeing it, not with me anyway.
So, you know, of course, in a lot of things when it comes to entertainment, we're essentially hypocrites, right? You know, we have these feelings about it, but we also want to be entertained. So I understand where you're coming from that. Now, I don't agree with the fact that we can't look back and judge something because we've evolved to that point, because we can look at slavery and be like, they should have known better back then anyway, you know? So they're not the only people that were having, and, you know, they're a counterpoint to the way that people talked about women. They're one way. So there were other people that weren't talking about women in the same way. So they could have known better. Of course, at the time, I didn't even know better myself. So I didn't have a problem with what I was hearing. I was jamming on the dance floor, you know? So, I don't agree that we can't judge them even because we've evolved. I mean, it's expected that we evolved, and we should be able to look back at it with a critical lens and say, you know, there are some things that we as a community let slide that we probably shouldn't have.
Well, I don't mean that it's not critical that we can't criticize it as much as we recognize it for what it is. We recognize it for the immaturity that it was. We recognize that it was wrong, and we recognize it that it was wrong in, I mean, it was really wrong, but its portrayal on film is very real, and they left out a lot, as well we would expect them to. I imagine that if Donald Trump were, as the narcissist that he is, to make a biopic about his life, which I'm sure he probably tries to make on a weekly basis, would leave out the whole Megyn Kelly fiasco of the last few weeks, or not. I don't know. I mean, you know.
And if he did, we would call him on it, and we would say, and yes, and you forgot to talk about this, and we didn't want you to forget that, and we remember. So I think that's the same thing that's really happening here, and saying we understand that you guys did some wonderful things from the perspective of bringing police brutality to the fore, from putting a creative way of telling the story about what was actually happening in Los Angeles and the West Coast at the time. We hadn't even heard about it, you know, in that way before. So just bringing in a whole different genre. So we give props for that, but we also have to call you to the carpet for the other things that were happening at the time too.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. So, so, you know, I will see it eventually. I don't know if I'll get a chance to see it in the theaters. I don't know if I don't know. I don't get out to many movies myself.
Yeah, that's that mother life.
Yes, that's the mother life. And I'm not, you know, Elihu and I haven't really talked about whether or not we were going to spend a date night going to go see that. So
I think you're just like us. That wasn't the top priority for us. You know, if we were going to go somewhere, that probably wouldn't have made the list of things we were going to do.
So
I'll watch it on Netflix when it comes out.
I'll watch it on Netflix when it comes out, and you know, and you're right. There is a certain level of entertainment hypocrisy that we all choose to live with. It is challenging to live a principled life where you just pretty much become check into the monastery and don't check out, because I can tell you that I have bought tickets to go see Cypress Hill.
All right.
We all know what they rapped about, so I love me some Cypress Hill. And so and there are things that I didn't really particularly agree with them either, but find them massively entertaining.
So there you go. I think we all have that, the fact that I still watch Love and Hip Hop. Okay, I said it.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. So so there's our review of a movie we haven't gone
and that we are not quite recommending that you
we're not necessarily recommending and don't necessarily have intentions of seeing. So on that note,
take that
take that for what it's worth. We will go ahead and close out our show. Thank you all for listening to another episode with us. You can find the show notes at addwaterandstirpodcast.com. You can subscribe to us and leave us ratings through iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app. We absolutely love to engage with our audience, so please tweet us at AWS pod, Add Water and Stir Podcast. Mimi, where can they find you in the E-Streets?
You can find me on the Twitter at Mimi Complex. You can read archives of my blog at ComplicatedMelodi.com. That's melody with an I. And you can email me at ComplicatedMelodi@gmail.com. What about you? Where can they find you?
You can find me on AdoptiveBlackMom.com for the blog, on Facebook and Twitter, the same name, AdoptiveBlackMom, and AdoptiveBlackMom@gmail.com. Please do tweet us individually, collectively, and let us know what's going on. We've got a couple of questions out there floating. Please tell us about your transitions around your foster and adoptive placements. Tell us your trials and triumphs. Let us know how things are going, and please share tips for other listeners. And so with that, we will bid you adieu. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.
Bye.